City News on TV Rotorua is proudly brought to you by Rotorua Central.
Good evening, Rotorua. Tonight on City News, the SPCA is celebrating the opening of their new shop. The 10th production from the Shakespeare Outside Theatre Group is playing at Ohinimutu, and we air our two-part interview with Waiariki MP, the Honourable Te Rotorua Flavel. The new SPCA shop is up and running, with staff looking forward to the settling in period. They had to move as the previous shop is earmarked for removal to make way for the new countdown on Ferry Springs Road. Manager Eve Johnson says it's been a hectic few weeks.
Well, we've had to move our location to across the road because there's going to be a brand new countdown coming to this side of Ferry Springs, to our side of town, which is great news.
Oh, that is great news. So how many shops did this affect?
This has actually affected 9 businesses in that area, some that haven't been able to relocate because it's quite busy along this strip, but we were really lucky to secure this building.
And what have we got to look forward to 2015?
2015 for us is all about our op shops and our education program. So it's making sure our 2 op shops are working, but also our education program is going to be consolidated in the community.
The 10th production from the Shakespeare Outside Theatre Group is playing at Ohinimutu. Show producer Valerie Dyson says performing Othello lakeside at Ohinimutu is a stunning experience audiences will appreciate.
Well, from a production point of view, we want to bring Shakespeare as close as we can to how he would do it. So we're outside. We don't have very many props. We do have costumes, but we don't have very many props. And so the whole thing is just as natural as we can get it.
And making his acting debut in the lead role as Othello is actor Aidan Taipeti.
I did the Shakespeare competition when I was at Western Heights High School 100 years ago, and I was in another production, but that was basically just bouncing around a stage being me, which wasn't really acting at all. But yeah, this is very different, very different.
Yeah, very
it's
different.
Actually quite hard work.
Their Shakespeare Outside shows are on tomorrow and Sunday starting at 7 p.m. In sport tonight, Crankworks organisers say volunteer spots are still open for the upcoming event. Organiser Tuck Mutu says Crankworks is the world's largest mountain biking festival and will be here in March, featuring the best pro athletes as well as competitions, concerts and culture. He says volunteers are guaranteed to enjoy the atmosphere and culture of Crankworks and can expect an amazing wrap party at the end of the event. For more information, visit crankworks.com. To your weather now. Mainly fine with a chance of a shower tonight with light winds and an overnight low of 13. We have a full forecast of the weekend's weather coming up after City News, thanks to Met Service, and you can access all your weather information you need at metservice.com. For program listings or to watch City News again, visit our website tvrotorua.co.nz and remember to check out our TV Rotorua Facebook page. Coming up on City News, we meet Mariana Morrison and find out about her fundraiser for hospice, and we're at the offices of the Honourable Te Rotorua Flavel, Waiariki MP, to talk about his plans for 2015.
We always have wonderful people within our community fundraising and raising awareness for all the organisations that help us. Mariana Morrison, standing here next to me, is actually on a mission to help hospice, and she has a very special reason for doing so. But we'll get to know her a little bit first. Mariana Morrison, your last name, it's very familiar, especially around here in Rotorua. Tell us about your family.
Yes, so Sir Howard Morrison and Lady Morrison are my grandparents. My father's Howard Morrison Jr. from Hunting Aotearoa.
Oh wow, so you're very, very well connected here to Rotorua.
Yes.
Now, we've had one of the centres named after your grandfather just recently. The convention centre is now the Sir Howard Morrison Performing Arts Centre?
Yes, that's correct. So on the 24th of September, we had a night to remember and the name changing of the Sir Howard Morrison Centre in remembrance of my grandfather who passed away 5 years ago.
And that was also another significant date for other reasons as well, wasn't it?
Yes, it was also the date that myself and my ultra crew gathered in remembrance of the concert, and also decided to set a date for the 14th of February to swim from Motiti Island to Maketu.
Oh, wow, that's absolutely wonderful. And so why Valentine's Day? Why that day?
So Valentine's Day is very significant for myself, for the search for Frank Farmer, which everybody's pretty aware of now. And basically we thought that would be a good time frame for enough training and to ensure that we had enough time to prepare for this event.
Now, you're not just someone who was sitting at home and decided to up and swim. You're actually quite a sporty individual, aren't you? So let's get some background about the types of sports that you did. Well, involvement in school. You went to Rotorua Girls High, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I went to Rotorua Girls High School. I left in 2002 to join the Navy, but up until then I swam competitively for a number of years and also played water polo. My last official, I suppose, competitive playing water polo was at the New Zealand Defence Force in Ohakune in 2005. So,
okay. Yeah, so plenty of swimming experience.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Okay, so you're no stranger to the water, but you're also no stranger to raising awareness. This is not the first event that you've done, that you've taken part in, or that you've initiated in order to bring awareness. What was the first one that you did do?
So the first one I did was last year for Cancer Society, the Relay for Life. I decided to do it in response to my mum, who was undergoing chemotherapy and radiation at the time. So I ran 26 Ks around the Rotorua Lake, and then the remainder was at the stadium, so it was 70 out of 100. But I had a torn tendon at the time, which I'd obtained through a netball injury a few weeks prior, but was told there's nothing wrong with you, so I carried on. 7 weeks later, went to do the Rotorua 50th Marathon, and then straight after I got an urgent referral to see orthopaedic surgeons. So
yeah, you were raising awareness for Cancer Society because your mother, but you're also doing the same now with hospice, aren't you?
Yes, that's correct. So hospice provided as a palliative care provider for terminally ill. They were amazing in the last stages of my mum's life. They provide enormous support. They're just absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. And so what sponsors have you got so far?
So the sponsors I have so far are Rotorua Aquatic Centre and the Blue Lake Top 10 Camping Ground have also sponsored as well.
How much do you think how much do you anticipate to raise?
I'd like to raise as much as we can. Okay. I don't want to put a figure on it. There's no donation, too small. The whole idea is also fundraising of not only just fundraising but to raise awareness of hospice, because you have the likes of Cancer Society and hospice just haven't had that kind of recognition.
Absolutely. Now, it's no small feat swimming from Motiti Island to Maketu. How long do you think it would take you?
So we're giving, myself and the crew have decided to give myself 5 hours to complete the swim.
Is there a reason why that time?
So for safety reasons, the salt water, taking on board, anything can happen out there on the day. You just, you're in the sea, you can't predict, and trying to just allow as much time as possible to do it successfully would be the best way.
And safely, right?
Definitely.
Making sure that
definitely.
Now, you've got a very busy schedule. How are you able to fit this in? Tell us about some of the things you're doing, taking time off work in order to get it done. You're also studying.
So I'm doing my Masters of Management at the moment. I'm just conducting my research proposal for my thesis, which is due a week after the swim. I'm also training. I have a 5-year-old daughter who I look after, who's in my full-time care, and I also work with people with intellectual disabilities.
So you're a busy individual, and I can imagine that it would be absolute passion that drives you to do this.
Oh, definitely. So working with high needs has given me the passion to want to work with people and raise awareness and stuff like that.
Well, look, I wish you all the best, Mariana, but can we please know, is there a page that we can go to? Is there a site that we can visit in order to donate? How do our Rotorua community donate to your cause?
Yeah, so if the community would like to go to Motiti Maketū page and like the page, add, share, would be much appreciated. Also, you can go on fundraising online, which is the direct link on that page. You can also go to Playtopia, Playland, they've got a bucket collection there, also the Rotorua Citizens Club. And if you're in town, Eruwera Street Hospice also taking collections.
Well,
be much appreciated.
And we appreciate you, so thank you so very much for your time and best of luck. Let us know how it goes in the end.
Will do, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back. With me today we have the Honourable Te Ururua Flavel. He's going to have a quick chat with us about what it's been like for him thus far, some of the highlights from 2014 and what we have to look forward to 2015 and onwards. Thank you so much for having us.
Good boy, nice to be with you.
Yeah. Now, Te Ururua, you have ministerial roles, plural, so tell us what they are.
Well, I was lucky and been privileged to be given the roles of Minister for Māori Development, Minister for Whānau Ora and Associate Minister for Economic Development. The Whānau Ora profile was already there with my predecessor Tariana Tūria. The change of title from Māori Affairs to Minister for Economic Development is about, I suppose, a vision into the future as opposed to worried about the things in the past. And economic development sort of ties us into where we want to head into the future, that economic development is a pathway to pulling people out of the issues of poverty that have affected many people, but also it's about giving them the opportunity to develop into a place for those who are comfortable in their lives to be able to achieve far greater. So that's the general overview about where we want to head.
Now let's talk about what the overview will be like going forth, but let's have a look going back first, because there's quite a clear division between what your role was up until the ministerial roles and then what it will be. So let's have an overview of 2014.
Well, 2014, obviously with the election, and the elections bring all sorts of things from the crazy to the dynamic, I suppose. It was a big year simply because we had to build to the election. Fortunately enough, the voters of the Waiariki electorate believed that I had something still to offer. It was 9 years in Parliament, and I can say honestly that the step from being a Member of Parliament through to being a Minister is pretty significant. And they say that even from being a Minister to being in Cabinet again is another step up. But it's definitely a far greater workload, far more responsibilities, a lot more travel, a lot more being away from home, and a huge amount of work. Luckily I've got an increase in staff and looking forward to a positive 2014. I mean, the highlight of course was leading us into the Māori Party into the election. We got 2 members, first time to have a list MP. And I think that we left a positive sort of impression on the country, but the fact is that we lost 2 seats, and therefore we've got a lot of work to do to be able to claw everything back. I suppose the strange thing about the election was that there's 7 seats set aside for Māori, and the Māori Party gained 1 of them. And yet, while there might be 6 MPs in the Labour Party who are MPs, in the end, the one person in the Māori Party is probably the one that's most influential, which is a strange situation, but it doesn't matter, because I'm looking forward to getting stuck in and implementing some change, hopefully for the whole country, but certainly targeted at Māori people, because that's the electorate that I have to look after.
And how do you envision that we do this? How do you envision that will happen? Well,
the portfolio areas allow me, in Māori affairs, it's huge. I mean, it's wide. When you're talking about education, it's fine, you can just focus on education, whereas Māori Affairs captures education, or Māori Development actually captures education, captures housing, it captures employment, it captures all sorts, right across the board. So the responsibilities are huge, and the best part is that I am able to, through the relationship recorded with the National Party, is to engage at the highest level with the regular meetings with the Prime Minister, regular meetings with the Deputy Prime Minister in terms of finance. So the key things that we get from being in the relationship with National are, number one, that we must vote with the budget. because if you can't pass the budget, you can't run the country. And so we're comfortable with that because we want to have stable government. Number two, that we can disagree with the government at any point in time, except for the budget. So that's important because there's legislation that we don't inherently agree with. Thirdly, that we're able to have a no surprises clause with the government, so all we have to do is tell them, and they're quite happy with that because they've already got the numbers right now to govern. Fourthly, that we get policy gains, which is the stuff that we've worked on in terms of the sort of stuff that was promoted throughout the election. Fifthly, able to negotiate budget, money for use in particular portfolios as well as through the party. And finally, that we get a ministerial role, which is basically quite important because it allows you to give serious focus and contribute at the highest levels to things that you believe in. So I think we've got the best of both worlds, be able to support the government for stable government, but not necessarily follow everything that they do, and implement change by way of budget negotiations and policy changes.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to come back after the break. We'll be back shortly to catch up about what's happening right here within our community and also about a trip to the UN. And welcome back. Again, Te Rotorua, thank you so much for having us, but let's talk about what's in it for Rotorua. What changes are we going to see?
Well, like I say, I can't deliver something specifically for Rotorua. I mean, it's just, that's not probably equitable for everybody else, but most importantly that the policy planks are going to be spread across the board. So we talked a little bit earlier about the change in approach by government agencies. Hopefully they will be able to see that, because it is about trying to give, firstly, those who are struggling, to give them a platform to be able to come out of that hole. Secondly, those who are living comfortably enough but actually want to achieve more. That's important, and that's all about economic growth. So I think we're going to see some change, some systemic change, that will mean that I think it'll take the country forward, and a part of that must be, at the end of the day, this, the word that everybody screamed about was jobs and employment throughout the election program, and what we have to do is start creating an environment. So one of the key things that we've been focusing on is the change to Te Ture Whenua Māori Act, which is basically about Māori land and having that land, freed up to be able to become an economic resource, an asset. That hasn't been the case in the past because of the nature of the law, which means that you can divide the land up almost to pieces which are uneconomical by themselves, and individual shares, which means that the problems have been is that there have been so many shareholders to call a meeting to be able to do anything with that land has been difficult because they're the number one, the value of the share is so small, and secondly, people are scattered throughout the world. So we're looking at that, trying to make sure that we utilise the Māori land that at this point in time has been identified as unproductive, and yet has huge potential. So there's going to be some good positive changes, I think, into the future.
Wow, it sounds like that you've got a really good grasp for things, and it sounds like you're going to be extremely busy. And another thing that you have to put into your busy schedule is a trip to the United States. Can you tell us about that? Former
Minister Peter Sharples went to the United Nations, as I did with him, to announce New Zealand's position on the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. And while he was there, he found that the wall set aside for New Zealand was pretty grotty, to be frank. So he came back and asked to have some works commissioned, and they put out the bid to weavers to do some tukutuku panels. Tukutuku is, of course, designs on wood and are made up of kia and other materials, and they all have unique designs. So I think from memory about 24 pieces were done by experts in their field, headed by one Tina Wirihana from Rotorua here, and as an expert in their field, along with James Schuster and his wife Kathy. And they got these 24 pieces. They were displayed in Te Papa at the end of 2014, and the exhibition closed then, and all of those pieces were shipped over to the United Nations and will go on the wall at the United Nations. So I'm going over as a representative of the government to the United Nations to basically bless those tukutuku panels. 3 of them will go to the residents of the New Zealand representative to the United Nations, Jim McClay, who is also our representative on the Security Council that New Zealand won a position on, when was it, end of last year. Okay. And 1 or 2 pieces will be in the office of the Minister for Māori Development. So the link is really between the Minister for Māori Development and the United Nations and the New Zealand resident in the United Nations. So that's how it's going to be, and I'm looking forward to that. Probably mid or straight after Waitangi Day, I head off with a group of the weavers that are going over, and also we'll be putting in other elements under my portfolio into the visit, a la the opportunity to meet with businesses that are involved in New Zealand to generate, I suppose, on the back of Māori Inc., every opportunity to allow people to get involved in trading overseas, in particular the United States and possibly to Canada.
Nice. And while you're over there, will you say hello to Helen Clark?
I have a time with Helen Clark. It's been designated to go and see her and have a yak with her, so it'll be quite good to catch up with her, as well as the Honourable Jim McClay, the Security Council person representative for New Zealand, and Māori businesses and other businesses that have links to Aotearoa. So it's going to be a good visit, probably about a week and a half, and it'll be full on, so I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, I'm glad you are, because it sounds like you're an extremely busy person. I definitely wouldn't want that job, so good luck with that. Thank you so much for having us, and it's been a pleasure, and no doubt we'll see you again.
No doubt.
That was the Honourable Te Aroha Flavel, Waiariki MP, talking with Melanie Groves. To contact City News, phone 07 3488 984 or email news@tvrotorua.co.nz. We hope you have a great long weekend. We'll see you next week. Ko Maria.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.
City News on TV Rotorua was proudly brought to you by Rotorua Central.